Act 1 Scene 1. Inside the Grand Royal Palace of Athens, Duke Theseus walks in with Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, who is engaged to, and Philostrate, who's in charge of the wedding celebrations. Theseus tells Hippolyta he's so excited, he can barely wait the 4 days until their wedding. She reassures him, saying, those 4 days will quickly turn into nights, and those 4 nights will quickly pass in dreams. Theseus sends Philostrate off to plan the entertainment for the wedding. After Philostrate leaves, Theseus tells Hippolyta that he won her love through fighting, but he'll marry her with a big, joyful celebration. Suddenly, a very angry Athenian nobleman named Aegeus comes in, bringing his daughter Hermia and her 2 boyfriends, Lysander and Demetrius. Aegeus explains to Theseus that he wants his daughter to marry Demetrius, but she loves Lysander, who he thinks has tricked her with love songs and gifts. Aegeus asks the Duke to enforce the old Athenian law, which lets a father choose his daughter's husband. Theseus talks to Hermia, advising her to obey her father, and saying that Demetrius is a good man. When Hermia replies that Lysander is also a good man, Theseus says that because Aegeus supports Demetrius, he's the better choice. Hermia wishes her father could see Lysander the way she does, but Theseus responds, instead, you must see things the way your father sees them. Hermia asks what will happen if she refuses to marry Demetrius. Theseus gives her these choices: become a nun, be sentenced to death, or marry Demetrius. When Hermia says she'd rather become a nun, Theseus tells her to think about it and give him her decision on his wedding day. Demetrius begs Hermia to change her mind and marry him. But Lysander quickly retorts that since Demetrius has Aegis's support, he should just marry Aegis himself. Aegis, completely furious, promises to give everything he owns to Demetrius. Lysander points out that he's just as well-born and rich as Demetrius. He also mentions that Demetrius is an unreliable lover. Before he met Hermia, Demetrius chased and won the heart of a woman named Helena. Theseus admits he's bothered by these facts, but says he can't change the laws of Athens. He advises Hermia to obey her father, and tells Aegis and Demetrius to come with him, so he can talk to them about the wedding plans and give them some private advice. Now alone, Lysander and Hermia talk about the problems lovers have faced throughout history, from wars and sickness to being the wrong age for each other, and other people choosing who they should love. Lysander says these loves are as short as any dream, while Hermia decides that since all lovers have to deal with challenges, they must face theirs too. Lysander comes up with a plan for them to run away together. They'll hide at his aunt's house, which is 7 miles outside of Athens. If they leave the city limits, then the city's laws won't apply to them anymore. They plan to meet in the woods outside Athens the next night. Just then, Hermia's childhood friend and Demetrius's former love, Helena, comes in. She wishes she had Hermia's beauty so that Demetrius would love her. To make Helena feel better, Hermia tells her that she and Lysander are about to run away together. The 2 lovers give Helena the details of their plan and wish her good luck with Demetrius. Left alone on the stage, Helena gives a speech about how love can trick your eyes, making even bad and worthless things look beautiful and important. She notices that she's as beautiful as Hermia, but Demetrius can't see it. And she adds that love is like a fickle child. Demetrius once swore he loved her, and now he loves Hermia. Helena decides to tell Demetrius about Hermia and Lysander's plan. She knows Demetrius will follow them into the woods, and that she's breaking her friend's trust, but she hopes it will win Demetrius's love back. Act 1 Scene 2. In another part of Athens, a group of regular working guys, including Snug, a woodworker, Bottom, a cloth weaver, Flute, someone who fixes bellows, Snout, a metalworker, and Starveling, a clothesmaker, meet at the house of Peter Quince, a carpenter. They're meeting to talk about the play they want to put on for Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding celebration, the most sad comedy and very cruel death of Pyramus and Thisbe. As Quince tries to run the meeting, Nick Bottom keeps butting in with his opinions. Quince calls out each man's name and tells him his part in the play. Bottom is going to play Pyramus. Bottom asks if Pyramus is a lover or a bad guy. When Quince says he's a lover who dies for love, Bottom brags about how much he'll make the audience cry, though he says he'd be even better as a bad guy. Quince continues to call out names and parts. Flute is supposed to play Thisbe, but Flute doesn't want to play a woman because he's growing a beard. Quince decides that Flute will wear a mask for the role. Bottom interrupts again, asking to play Thisbe as well as Pyramus, and shows how he can talk like a woman. Quince says no. Quince continues to give out parts. Starveling, Thisbe's mother. Snout, Thisbe's father. When Quince announces Snug will be the lion, Bottom begs to play the lion. He boasts about how loud he'll roar. After Quince objects that he might scare the ladies and get them all in trouble, Bottom promises to roar as softly as a dove or nightingale. Quince again says Bottom can only play Pyramus, and Bottom starts thinking a lot about what color beard he should wear. To make sure they have privacy, Quince asks them all to meet him in the woods near the palace that night. There, they will practice the play. Act 2 Scene 1. In the forest outside Athens, a fairy meets up with Robin Goodfellow. They talk about the argument between Oberon, the king of the fairies, and Titania, the queen of the fairies, about who gets to keep a beautiful Indian child as their helper. The fairy suddenly asks if Robin is the troublemaker known as Sweet Puck. Puck happily says yes, and brags about all the mischief he causes. Puck gets quiet when Oberon and Titania come in. Oberon says to her, "It's bad luck to meet you by moonlight, proud Titania." They immediately start arguing and accusing each other of cheating. Titania tells Oberon that their fighting has messed up nature, causing floods, fog, dead animals, and mixed-up seasons. Oberon says she could fix everything by obeying him and giving him the child. But Titania says she wouldn't give up the child for anything in the fairy world. The boy's mother was a follower of Titania's and died giving birth to him. She's raising him in the mother's memory. She invites Oberon to walk with her through the forest, but he refuses unless she gives him the child. She leaves. Once Titania is gone, Oberon swears to punish her for not obeying him. He calls to Puck and reminds him of the time when Cupid tried to hit the queen of a land in the west, but his arrow missed. Oberon continues that he saw where the arrow landed, on a little flower that turned from white to purple from love's wound. This flower is called Love in Idleness and has magical powers. If the juice of the flower is put on someone's sleeping eyelids, they'll fall madly in love with the next living thing they see. Puck promises to travel around the world in 40 minutes and bring Oberon the flower. He leaves. Oberon, alone, thinks about his plan. He'll wait until Titania is asleep and then put the juice on her eyes. When she wakes up, she'll fall in love with the first thing she sees, and he won't take away the spell until she gives him the child. Just then, Oberon hears voices. Since he's invisible, he decides to listen in. Demetrius and Helena come into the woods. Demetrius tells Helena to stop following him because he doesn't love her, and promises to kill Lysander. When Demetrius again tells Helena to leave him, Helena says, "I'm like your dog. The more you hit me, the more I'll love you." After more arguing, a frustrated Demetrius threatens to run and hide from her, leaving her to be eaten by wild animals. Helena promises to chase him, even though she says women are supposed to be chased, not to do the chasing. After they leave, Oberon promises that soon Demetrius will love Helena. Once Puck returns with the Love in Idleness flower, Oberon tells him that a nice Athenian woman is in love with a mean young man, and tells Puck to find the man and put the love potion on his eyes when he's sure the next thing he'll see is the woman. He adds that Puck can recognize the man by his Athenian clothes. Act 2, Scene 2. That night in the woods, Titania's fairy helpers sing her to sleep in a beautiful open space. Oberon then sneaks past the fairy guarding her, and drops the juice on her sleeping eyelids. He hopes that when she wakes up, the first living thing she sees will be completely disgusting, and then he leaves. Lysander and Hermia come into the area. They've gotten lost and decide to spend the night where they are. Lysander wants them to sleep close together, but Hermia insists they sleep apart to stay proper until they're married. Lysander promises to do what she wants, and says he hopes he dies if he ever stops being loyal. Once Hermia and Lysander are asleep, Puck comes in, complaining that he's searched the forest and hasn't found the Athenian young man he's looking for. Then he sees Lysander, and thinks the fact that they're sleeping far apart means he's the man who's been rejecting the Athenian woman. He drops the potion on Lysander's eyes, and hurries back to Oberon. Demetrius runs into the open space, chased by Helena. He demands she stop following him. She begs him to stay, but he keeps running, and she's too tired to follow. Helena feels hopeless and thinks she must be ugly, but then she notices Lysander on the ground. Helena wakes Lysander, who immediately says he loves her. He curses Demetrius for treating her badly, and regrets all the boring minutes he spent with Hermia now that he loves Helena. Helena thinks Lysander is making fun of her. She leaves. Lysander tells Hermia's sleeping body to never come near him again, and runs after Helena. Hermia suddenly wakes up from a bad dream where a snake was eating her heart while Lysander stood by, smiling and doing nothing. When she finds out Lysander is gone, she's terrified and goes to find him. Act 3, Scene 1. A little later, the working guys accidentally come into the open space where Titania is sleeping to practice their play. Before they start, Bottom says he's worried that some parts of their play are a problem. For example, he thinks the ladies will be upset when Pyramus kills himself with his sword. Starveling says they should just leave the killing out, but Bottom suggests another idea. They could write a speech at the beginning where they explain that no one really gets hurt, and also that Pyramus isn't really Pyramus, but Bottom. Quince agrees. Snout, meanwhile, thinks the ladies will also be scared of the lion. Bottom solves that problem too. Half of Snug's face should be visible through the lion's mask, to make it clear he's not a real lion. Snug should also announce that he's Snug and not a real lion. The working guys' next theatre problems are how to make sure there's moonlight on the stage since Pyramus and This meet by moonlight, and how to get a wall on stage since Pyramus and This are separated by a wall. They agree they should have one actor carrying a lantern pretend to be moonlight and another covered in plaster pretend to be a wall. Meanwhile, Puck, who's invisible, comes in. Puck is amused by the working guy's constant mistakes and decides to stay and watch, and maybe even be an actor too, if I see a reason. The working guys start practicing, messing up their lines, saying stinky instead of fragrant, and missing their cues. The play calls for Pyramus to leave the stage at one point, and Puck follows Bottom off stage. When Bottom comes back, his head has been turned into a donkey's head. Terrified, the other working guys run away. Puck turns himself into different animals and chases them. Bottom, who thinks his friends are pretending to scare him, decides to show he isn't scared by staying in the open space and singing. Titania wakes up at the sound of Bottom's voice. She begs Bottom to keep singing and tells him that she loves him. Bottom is stunned, though he says, and yet, to tell the truth, common sense and love don't go together much these days. Titania tells Bottom he must stay with her in the woods whether he wants to or not, because she loves him. She orders 4 fairies, Peace Blossom, Cobweb, Moth, and Mustard Seed, to take care of him and bring him jewels, fancy fruits, and to lead him to her sleeping place. Act 3, Scene 2. As Oberon wonders if Titania has woken up and who or what she's fallen in love with, Puck comes in and tells Oberon that Titania has fallen in love with a monster. He explains how he saw the working guys, turned Bottom's head into a donkey's head, and then Titania woke up and immediately loved a donkey. Oberon is pleased. But just as Oberon asks about Puck's success with the Athenian young man and Puck says he used the potion as Oberon asked, Demetrius and Hermia come in, arguing. Hermia thinks Demetrius has hurt Lysander because she doesn't believe he would leave her. Demetrius insists he didn't hurt Lysander, but Hermia still tells Demetrius to never come near her again, and leaves. Demetrius decides not to follow because she's so angry. Soon, he falls asleep. Oberon realizes what has happened and scolds Puck. What have you done? You've made a big mistake and put the love juice on someone who already loves someone else. He orders Puck to search the forest for Helena, and use some magic to bring her to Oberon, who will make Demetrius fall in love with her. Puck leaves. Oberon puts the love potion on Demetrius' eyes as Puck returns, warning that Helena is coming and Lysander is following her, madly in love. Puck is excited to watch the two men try to win Helena, saying, "Shall we watch their silly show? Man, these humans are such fools." Helena comes in with Lysander following her and begging her to believe that his love is real. She doesn't believe him. Just then, Demetrius wakes up, sees Helena, and falls in love. When he says he loves her, she gets furious. She thinks that now both men are making fun of her. The two men now start fighting and arguing over Helena, and each tries to get the other to just settle for Hermia. As Demetrius and Lysander argue, Hermia comes in. She demands to know why Lysander left her. Lysander tells her it was love that made him leave, his love for Helena. Hermia can't believe what Lysander is saying. Meanwhile, Helena now thinks that Hermia has joined with Demetrius and Lysander to make fun of her. She calls Hermia an ungrateful girl for turning on her now after their long friendship and for joining with men in making fun of another woman. Hermia can't understand why Helena would accuse her of such a thing. She demands Lysander tell her what's going on. But Lysander tells her to leave him alone and says he hates her. Hermia realizes Lysander is serious and turns on Helena. She calls her a love stealer. Helena, who still thinks Hermia is making fun of her, responds by calling Hermia a shameless fake, suggesting Hermia is pretending to be upset. But Hermia, who's shorter than Helena, thinks Helena is making fun of her height and says, "I'm not so short that I can't scratch your eyes out." Helena asks Lysander and Demetrius to protect her, which they happily do, even though she still thinks they're making fun of her. The rivalry between the men, though, has gotten so intense that they leave the women alone and go into the woods to fight each other for Helena's love. Helena, scared of Hermia, turns and runs. Hermia chases after her. Oberon thinks Puck intentionally caused all this chaos. Puck swears he made an honest mistake, though he admits he's happy about it. Oberon tells Puck to keep the men apart with illusions and tricks. Puck does just that as Oberon leaves to go get the changeling boy from Titania. Act 3, Scene 3. Puck, using his magic and the power to sound like anyone, confuses the four lovers. They wander around, never seeing each other, and eventually fall asleep in the same place they began. Then, Puck puts the love potion back on Lysander's eyes. As he does this, Puck says that when Lysander wakes up, he will see his true love and be happy again. Puck believes this will fix everything. Act 4, Scene 1. Titania, in her special garden spot, is completely in love with Bottom. She puts flowers in his hair and kisses his donkey-like ears. Meanwhile, Bottom bosses the other fairies around, telling them to bring him honey and scratch his head. When Titania asks what he wants to eat, he asks for dry oats or some peas. After that, both Titania and Bottom fall asleep. Then, Oberon and Puck arrive. Oberon says he now feels sorry for Titania, especially because she gave him the changeling child last night. He tells Puck to remove the donkey head from Bottom, so when Bottom wakes up, he can go back to Athens. Oberon then puts the potion on Titania's eyes. She wakes up, and even though she's confused about how she could have loved a donkey, she makes up with Oberon. Titania and Oberon dance together. Oberon announces that the next night, they will dance at Theseus's castle to celebrate Theseus's wedding and the weddings of Lysander and Hermia, and Demetrius and Helena. Theseus, Hippolyta, Aegis, and others come in, ready to go hunting. They see the sleeping lovers and wake them up. Theseus asks Lysander and Demetrius how they, as rivals, ended up sleeping peacefully together in the same clearing. Lysander isn't sure, but he explains his plan to run away with Hermia. Aegeus wants Lysander and Hermia punished, but Demetrius says that even though he followed Hermia into the woods because he loved her, he now, by some power, loves Helena. Theseus overrules Aegeus, decides that all 4 lovers will get married at his wedding, and then everyone leaves. The lovers talk about the strange dream they all shared the night before, and then follow the Duke. Bottom wakes up, shouting that he should be called when it's his turn to come back on stage. He suddenly realizes he's not at rehearsal, and he thinks he must have fallen asleep and had an incredibly strange dream. He promises to have Quince write down the dream as a song, and he plans to sing it to the Duke at the end of their play, Pyramus and Thisbe. Act 4, Scene 2. In Athens, the workers gather to practice their play. But because Bottom, who they believe is the only person in Athens who can play Pyramus, isn't there, they worry the play is a disaster. When they hear that 2 other couples will be getting married along with the Duke, they are sure they'd have been successful if they could perform their play. As they are feeling hopeless, Bottom comes in. The others ask where he's been, but he only says that it's time to put on their play. Act 5, Scene 1. At the palace, Theseus and Hippolyta talk about the story the lovers told about their night in the forest. Theseus says that lovers, just like crazy people and poets, have overheated minds. He thinks all 3 groups imagine things that aren't real because their imaginations are more powerful and messed up than a normal person's. However, Hippolyta thinks there might be more to the lovers' story, since they all had the same dream. The lovers come in, and Theseus asks what entertainment they'd like to see. Philostrate shows them a list of options. Theseus is intrigued by a short, long play about Pyramus and Thisbe, which is both sad and funny, and wonders how that's possible. Philostrate explains that the play is short but long because it's the shortest play he's ever seen, yet it still feels too long. It's sad and funny because when Pyramus kills himself at the end, Philostrate cried, but only from laughing so much. When Theseus learns that the actors are common workers trying to do something beyond their skills, he decides to watch. He says that nothing can go wrong when simple people try their best. Even though Hippolyta worries about people being made fun of when they're trying to serve, Theseus says he can tell when someone is nervous but trying to be welcoming, and he'll reward them for their effort, not their acting skills. He also admits it will be funny to see their mistakes. Quince comes on stage and gives a prologue. It's completely ridiculous. At one point, Quince says the actors aren't even there. We are not here to entertain you. However, Theseus, Hippolyta, and the lovers point out that the prologue would make sense if it were punctuated correctly. Quince continues, introducing the story and the characters. Pyramus, Thisbe, the wall, the moonshine, and the lion. Snout comes on as the wall and tells the audience that the lovers will talk through a hole in the wall, which he represents with his fingers. Theseus and Demetrius joke that the wall is the funniest talking wall they've ever seen. Bottom enters as Pyramus and complains about the wall separating him from his love. Theseus says that since the wall can talk, it should complain back. Bottom, hearing this, turns to Theseus and says that the wall isn't supposed to talk here because it doesn't have any lines. He explains that his speech is Thisbe's cue to come on stage. Flute comes on as Thisbe and goes to the wall. Through a hole in the wall, Snout's fingers, the lovers talk about their love, using many wrong references to old stories. Finally, they decide to meet at Ninny's tomb, instead of Ninus's tomb, to run away together. Hippolyta says, "This is the silliest thing I've ever heard." Theseus replies, "If we think of them as no worse than they think of themselves, they'll seem like excellent people." Snug comes on as the lion and says he's not a real lion, so the ladies shouldn't be scared. Starveling comes on and says his lantern is the moon, and he's the man in the moon. Theseus and the others make fun of their speeches. Thisbe goes to Ninny's tomb but runs away, dropping her cloak, when the lion roars. The lion plays with the cloak and leaves. When Pyramus comes on, he sees Thisbe's cloak with blood from the lion's mouth. Thinking she's dead, he gives a long speech, stabs himself, and says he's dead in 6 different ways before actually dying. Then Thisbe comes back. She sees Pyramus dead. In sadness, she stabs herself and dies. Theseus and the lovers keep making fun of the play. Finally, Bottom asks if they want an extra speech or a dance. Theseus says, "No extra speech, please. Your play doesn't need an apology." The workers do their dance and leave. Theseus says it's almost fairy time, midnight, and time for bed. Everyone leaves. Puck comes on, followed by Oberon, Titania, and their fairies. They dance and sing to bless the 3 weddings and all the children they'll have. Everyone leaves except Puck, who gives a final speech. He tells the audience that if we actors have offended you, they should just think of the play as a dream.